RPN, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by the official Star Trek Discovery Starships Collection. All new starships in a larger size format and officially authorized by CBS Studios. Subscribe today and receive the USS Shinjo for only $9.95 with free shipping. For details, visit eaglemoss.com/discovery starships.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 302, Shadowplay.
Welcome to Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray, and may I also say bienvenue. Each week on Mission Log, we watch an episode of Star Trek, examining it for messages and morals and other big things, and seeing whether the episode holds up today.
This week, Shadowplay, the one where Jake plots the course of his life, Kira sets a course for love, and Odo and Dax save a village that mostly doesn't exist. I've got trivia coming up in a bit, but first,
I'm going to let you know how to get in touch with us. Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love to hear your voice. 323-522-5641 is the phone number to call, 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. John does have trivia, but really quickly, a little bit of trivia before we do the trivia. We've already made a song reference for people who don't know. It's cabaret, it's cabaret, it's cabaret.
Cabaret. Mm-hmm. Good. That was your best Joel Grey yet.
Oh, dude. I'm more of a, Alan Cummings. I'm more of the sure. Alan Cummings version of that song.
Yeah.
Although I should stick with Joel Grey because, Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, you do actually have trivia that's tied to this episode of Mission Log, if I'm not mistaken.
I do indeed. Shadowplay was written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe. Pretty straightforward there. He gets the story and teleplay credits on this one. Now, originally, this story had some darker elements where you had a prison that Dax and O'Brien were trying to escape. Hold that thought, though, because pieces of that plot show up later in DS9 and in Voyager. This one was directed by Robert Shearer. There's a familiar name, but this is his only DS9 directorial credit. On TNG, he directed 11 episodes, including True Q, Chain of Command Part 1, The Defector, and The Measure of a Man. Now, remember when Data found himself in a Ren Fair town and he was carrying that radioactive material, but he had no memory? That was Thine Own Self, and they used the same set for this episode. Makes sense because these two episodes aired less than a week apart in February of 1994. Hey, let's talk about guest stars. Well, we do welcome back Philip Anglin as Vedic Bareil. And we have filling out the cast Kenneth Mars as Coleus. Well, Kenneth was already very well known in front of the camera. More on that in a second. But I didn't realize what a huge career he had as a voice actor as well. Dozens of credits from TV to feature films, everything from Tiny Toons adventures to voicing Triton in Disney's The Little Mermaid. Audiences might know him best, though, from his on-screen work, which he starred in the early 60s, frequently appearing on TV shows like Love American Style, He and She, Fernwood Tonight. But when we talk feature films, I think of Kenneth Mars first and foremost from collaborating with Mel Brooks. He was in The Producers, and of course, he was in Young Frankenstein. Kenneth Tobey plays Rurigan, another actor with a long and varied career, and he was a favorite among many in the DS9 staff. Kenneth Tobey made many appearances in small films going back to the mid-40s and early TV, which kept him busy through the 50s and beyond. He had recurring roles on TV shows like Lassie, I Spy, and Gunsmoke, but he was known to genre audiences for movies like The Thing, the original from 1951, and It Came from Beneath the Sea in 1955. This is his only Trek appearance. And finally, Noli Thornton as Taya. 2 years prior to this episode, she guest starred in the TNG episode Imaginary Friend in that show's 5th season. We mentioned at the time that she had a small role in the Albert Brooks film Defending Your Life, and she also had recurring spots on Beverly Hills 90210 and The Martin Short Show.
Please, let me recap this episode. Meatbags in love, meatbags in turmoil, and a whole village of incredibly deep, well-realized, manufactured intelligences. Now, let us hear how John recaps it.
Prologue. On their way to the Gamma Quadrant to examine an unusual particle field, Dax and Odo while away their time by talking about various romances and flirtations among their station mates back on DS9. Well, Dax is doing the talking. Odo seems very uninterested in other people's personal lives, romance in particular, especially if it involves him. Before the personal talk can get too personal, Dax finds the Omicron particles they're looking for, very rare particles created by matter-antimatter reactions, and they're coming from a nearby planet. Sensors aren't helping much, so they'll have to beam down for a closer look. On the surface, they find a little village, a reactor of some sort that's creating those particles and wreaking havoc with their tricorders, and a man with a weapon pointed right at them. Act 1. On DS9, Kira checks in on Quark. He doesn't seem too pleased to see her, and she explains that his cousin, Kono, just popped up, then made a hasty escape. Wouldn't happen to have anything to do with fencing stolen Cardassian artifacts, would it? Quark plays dumb, she's not buying it, and Kira walks off reminding Quark that even while Odo is away, he shouldn't expect to get away with anything. In the Cisco home, Ben tells Jake he ought to think about getting a job. The boy isn't too keen on it, especially with the inference that it's all about looking good for entering the academy someday, but he'll give it a shot, apprenticing with Chief O'Brien. Back on that planet, Coleus, the man with the gun, interrogates Dax and Odo. They say they aren't criminals, they're just there exploring, and Odo tries to prove his point by beaming away and beaming right back. Coleus is shocked. A full 22 of his fellow villagers have disappeared over the last few months in much the same way, only they didn't come back. The most recent disappearance was 6 hours ago, and they've got no evidence to follow. Odo, being an investigator himself, offers to help. He's introduced to Rurigan, oldest man in their town, and he says he last saw his daughter earlier in the morning, but his granddaughter, Taya, saw her a little later. Dax takes another scan, but her tricorder still isn't working. Coleus offers up a scanner of his own instead. Rurigan introduces Odo to Taya. She's very young, playing with a top. She's a bit scared when Odo gently starts the questioning. It'll have to wait, though. Rurigan escorts his granddaughter away. Act 2. Day 1 of Jake Sisko's new job with O'Brien. Seems happy enough to be there. That goes for both of them, and Ben sweetens the deal by giving his son his very own Starfleet communicator badge. Kira recruits Dr. Bashir to help keep an eye on Quark, and just in time because she's going to be busy with a special guest. Seems Vedic Bareil has been invited on board to give a speech at the Bajoran altar. Quark seems pleased. Odo continues with Odo work. It's morning, and he approaches Taya again. She's curious about him, though. A shapeshifter? A changeling? That's just a made-up thing. He assures her he's real, though he doesn't want to prove it just now. He says being asked to turn into other things was something he did not enjoy for others' amusement. She thinks maybe some of those people were afraid of him, and Odo says, yeah, that could be the case. She also asks about his parents, and Odo says he'd like to know too. Taya's father died when she was 4, and she tells Odo that when she last saw her mother, she was happy. There wasn't any reason she could think of for the disappearance or where she would go. Odo asks if it's possible that she left the valley where they live, but Taya says nobody ever leaves the valley. They just don't. Everything they need is right here. She's scared that her mother isn't coming back. That's what her grandfather says, but Odo assures her he will do everything he can to bring her back. Act 3. Learning technical details about isolinear rods with Chief O'Brien, Jake lets it be known that he's not really into the whole Starfleet thing. The Academy is his dad's thing, not his thing, and he's afraid to tell his old man. Miles gets it. His dad wanted him to be a musician, but he ran off to Starfleet. His dad was furious, but he says he eventually calmed down and became very proud of Miles. His lesson to Jake is that he's got to live his own life. Speaking of Livin, Vedic Bareil gave a speech at the altar that has Kira worked up with disagreement, and he's ready to channel that into something more fun. How about a game of spring ball? Yeah, the Vedic isn't just all preachy philosopher all the time. He's a dude with interest. Spring ball it is. Back in the village, Rurigan is now the subject of Odo's questions. He doesn't seem that concerned, even with his own daughter missing. You see, he's dying, and he's had a good life. He just figures there are some things that are out of his control. Odo presses for more, though. Why has no one ever left the valley? Because there's nothing out there. Nothing for them, anyway. Rurigan says he is absolutely certain there are no people beyond the valley. There just aren't. So, off to the country go Odo, Dax, and, tagging along, Taya. She points out a tree which is as far from the village as she's ever been. As Dax walks past it, the scanner in her hand vanishes without a trace. Taya follows them as Odo tells her not to come any closer. She's holding a bunch of berries she picked, and when she extends her hand toward them, the berries, along with most of her forearm, disappear. Act 4. Odo and Dax have a theory about the missing villagers, and they're ready to share it with Coleus. With a few modifications on the reactor at the middle of town, Dax asks for his cloak. She puts it aside, then punches up a command on the interface of the reactor. The cloak disappears, then reappears, much to Coleus' surprise. But why? The reactor isn't a reactor at all, but a holographic projector. It's been sitting there pumping out Omicron particles into holographic images with shape and mass, and that accounts for objects and people and everything and everyone in the village. They're all holograms. At Spring Ball, Kira whipped Bareil something good, and they're enjoying a post-game chat over dinner. It turns intimate. Bareil is a man of many interests, and Kira is definitely one of them. As they kiss, it is revealed that the person who invited Bareil to DS9 is someone who owes Quark over a gambling debt. We'll have to interrupt this make-out scene for Kira to confront Quark. The villagers are confronting their existential crisis about as one would expect. Denial, confusion, anger, and great concern over the very idea that this hologram theory of their existence is true. Dax reassures them that she needs to fix their projector or else the whole system will ultimately fail. There's a chance she can bring the missing people back online. Of course, there's also the possibility that she can't fix it, and then everyone will be lost. They agree to allow Dax to try. Certainly Taya wants the chance to see her mother again. When Dax shuts down the machine, the people all disappear, then the buildings of the village. She and Odo find themselves in an empty valley. But there is one person who didn't disappear with the others. It's Rurigan, and he's as real as they are. Act 5. Rurigan's planet fell under control of the Dominion some 30 years ago, and he escaped to this place, creating a hologram simulation of the people and places he had lost. It's over now, though, and he asked to be returned to his real home. What about his holographic village? He says they're just an illusion. They aren't real. Odo says he's not so sure, though. They may not fall neatly into their definition of life, but look at Taya. She's younger than the hologram program, a being that Rurigan didn't create. He comforts her. He feels for her. They're real enough. And Odo says Rurigan can't turn his back on them. Back at the station, truth time at the Cisco's. Jake likes learning from O'Brien, but he's got to come clean. He doesn't want to join Starfleet. It's not his thing. And Benjamin Sisko, being the good dad he is, says that's okay. Just find what you love and do that. That's how to make a father proud. Kira stops by Quark's with the news that the jig is up. They caught Quark's cousin again trying to come back on board with Cardassian artifacts. Just a shame she didn't catch him with Quark at the same time. Oh, and thanks for having Bareil brought up. She found him diverting. Dax has been at work on the hologram projector and ready to give it a go. Rurigan stops her, though. If she's successful, he doesn't want his holographic friends to know that he is flesh and blood. He doesn't want to be treated as different by them. They fire up the machine, the village materializes, the crowd of people, and those who were missing are all back. Coleus thanks them, and he says he wonders who created this whole thing. Odo says whoever it was did a good job. Tea's mother is back. The little girl goes to thank Odo and say her goodbye. She hopes he finds his parents someday too, a wish Odo himself echoes. Before he leaves, Odo calls out to Tea one last time, then shapeshifts himself into a spinning top, exactly like the one Tea was playing with when they first met. She laughs. He reforms as himself. They beam back to their ship, and Odo smiles along the way. The end.
You know, I think everybody on Deep Space Nine should watch DS9.
Really? Wait, well, you'd think they'd have access, yeah.
You would, because what happened last week? Oh, we can't figure out what's going on. We'd better beam in.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
And then this week, we can't figure out what's going on. We better beam in.
Yeah. Our stuff is full of interference. None of it works. Let's risk personnel.
Fingers crossed we'll be able to get back. Hey, maybe one of us should stay here. No. It's better to go in pairs. Oh, well, okay. Yeah.
Right. No probes, no nothing. No talk of setting up the cones around the planet until you figure out what's going on.
Maybe we should start bringing a third person.
Maybe. That's not a bad idea. Yeah. There you go. Plenty of room in those shuttles to put an extra seat. Hey, big changes in the personnel at DS9. Very important. I hope everybody got the newsletter on that. There's a Bolian running the Jumja stand. I mean, I'm glad they got rid of that last guy because he was a real jerk to Keiko.
Yeah.
But the most important question, who is cutting hair on DS9 now?
Well, let me answer that question with a follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there so much hair in the Jumja sticks now?
Ew.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just saying, they're pulling double duty. There are only 300 people on DS9, John.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All that room and only 300 people, and you just put me off Jumja sticks forever. Mm-hmm.
Wow, I'm sorry, man. I know how you feel about food.
See, I got to move on to some other kind of food now. Hey, Jake, I love this exchange to Jake. You know, what do I need a job for? He asks his father, Ben Sisko. Well, you're 15 years old now. It's time you took a little responsibility. At 15, okay, look, we're in the 24th century.
Right.
He's probably going to live to be well over 120 and a healthy life at that. It's not like Ben needs an extra hand on the farm.
Right.
You know, like let the kid be a kid, and a good call not working with Nog at Quarks. Sure, don't start a bar career early for him. But man, you got Keiko teaching the school, and Jake will be fine.
I agree. I really applauded his idea of going to work at Quarks. Honestly,
you think that's the way to go?
Well, I mean, we know you in food, we know me in bars, so yeah, I think that's a fine way for a lad to start life.
All right. So speaking of food, on the planet, they talk about first meal, mm-hmm. and I love it when you need an appropriately alien-sounding phrase for something common like breakfast.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. Actually, it sounded really good. You know, they enjoyed a first meal of grain bread and. Mm-hmm. Tree fruit, maybe.
Right? Yeah. Served alongside animal meat and, yeah.
Right, and wet water.
Wet water.
Was the only thing I could come up with to drink, yeah.
Yes, liquid water for our first meal, yeah.
Just dip your grain bread in it. It tastes great.
Right. Hey, I picture Ben Sisko going up to his kid. Hey, Jake, I got you a communicator badge. Now I can know where you are all the time.
No kidding. You know, he put the communicator badge on him like it was graduation. And I was thinking, you should really be able to graduate out of communicator badge.
Right.
Like from the time Jake's a toddler, they should have a communicator badge on him. And even if Jake can't respond, it could just be, it beeps and it's like, yeah, listen, if that's my kid in the reactor, could you please return him to me?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Call.
I mean, because it just seems like a better idea. Hey, while we're on the subject of Jake.
Yeah.
The isolinear rods talk with O'Brien, it doesn't really stand up to a rewatch, and I'll tell you why. Because he's trying to remember what each color is for on this, rod that has plenty of space for writing.
Yeah, right.
Why not label them instead of color coding them? Or why not color code them and label them? And really, I think the most important question, as far as learning, why doesn't Jake have a pad? Or maybe a pen and paper to write this down. Would he show up to Keiko O'Brien's class with nothing on which to take notes? Or no way to take notes?
A really good set of questions. I think about the color coding and Starfleet, and the first thing that comes to mind is all the uniforms. And
right.
Like you go back to TOS era, and you got Command Gold, and you got Science Blue, and you got kind of engineering and security red. But most of those people, like they also have a name, and they don't have a label on there. But you go like, oh yeah, that's Captain Kirk. He's in yellow. I make that association in my head right away. And this is just like, hey, here's some sticks. They all look the same. Figure it out.
Right. Now the lavender one is for the restrooms, and the lilac one is for the washroom. Okay, well, those all seem very similar, actually. And why do we need isolinear rods for the restroom, now that I think about it? Another question, by the way, as long as we're talking about the Siscos, is Ben Sisko a walk-in? Or is Avery Brooks a walk-in? Now, if you've seen him at a convention, you've probably asked that question as well. He laughs at the appropriate time, right?
Yeah.
But his laugh is never really appropriate, is it?
No, it seems a little odd, a little misplaced a few times. And I'm just, see, in my head, having grown up as an actor, I'm trying to picture a script where maybe I would have gone in and made a little note to myself, like, this is funny, or blah, blah, but then like literally just stopping a line, laugh here.
Right.
Yeah. That's the way I picture it.
He barks a laugh like a robot trying to pretend to be human, a la Data, let's say.
Right.
Or like an alien who's taken over a human body. Also, in this episode anyway, Ben seems to think that Starfleet Academy is a Broadway show.
That was an interesting piece of direction and really selling that line.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it in a while, because he even does his hands like it's a marquee. I'm kind of more interested in seeing the Starfleet Academy series that people have wanted for the past 30 years now. It's like a combination of cop rock and Beverly Hills 90210 and Star Trek. It might be kind of exciting.
Taya says nobody ever leaves the valley. Yeah. And in that one line, you have an explanation of why I can't move to Van Nuys. Because I've heard.
Yes, just stay in beautiful downtown Burbank.
Akira has that great line. I liked everything about it except the content. And this would actually be a really fun thing to pick apart, but I feel like this episode has so much more to talk about. But I just wanted to point out that line because it is a fun one.
Well, with the rules of acquisition, they tell us what the rule of acquisition is. They didn't tell us what the eighth prophecy was in this, but I really did like that exchange that they were having. So far, she hasn't been able to get past, the fact that he's a priest. Or the fact that he's a religious leader. And it was really great for her to say, yeah, you're like, you could be full of it, Father, which is kind of a neat thing to see. Really, though, I like the writing and the delivery of this scene. Like, when she's like, I find your interpretation. And he's like, oh, brilliant, inspiring. I was like, oh, that's funny. That's actually, I like the interplay that they're doing there. I'll tell you which scene I didn't like. Yeah. The kiss.
Really?
I like the way the kiss began, but seriously, are you going to talk or are you going to kiss? Like the occasional word is like, okay, that's fine. But they really start having a whole conversation that I'm like, all right, one thing or the other, would you please? Now, maybe they want to keep him, well, not chaste, or maybe they want to keep her chaste. I don't know what they want to do. That conversation honestly seemed to me like it would be better served, after other events. In the middle of the kiss seemed like it felt awkward to me.
See, I actually quite liked that scene because I immediately thought of Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint on the train in North by Northwest. That was a thing that Hitchcock would do where I guess it was sort of a throwback to the Hays Code thing where you couldn't have prolonged intimate scenes with people, who couldn't have prolonged kissing. And this was a little trick. You deliver a little dialogue in between the kissing, so you keep the scene moving along, and you go, oh, look, they're not just stopping for a kiss. This is actually serving the plot of the movie, serving the plot of the show. And I thought they played it really well. I thought, no slight certainly to Kira and Bareil in the scene. But yeah, I get it. It's clunky to have to deliver exposition while kissing, but I happen to really like that scene. I thought it was really nice. I
was watching it with a friend of mine, and we were both like, okay, one or the other. Sorry. I mean, honestly, this is a very small part of this, but, I would like them to start kissing and then end up, later. You see, the problem is, though, you can't show Bareil in his robe because that's all he walks around in anyway. Right. So you cut to the next morning. Hey, you know what I was just thinking of? Yeah, I was just thinking of Quark. And no, okay. See, okay. Well, if we did extra shows, I would say we should do an extra show just rewriting that scene. But we got a lot of other stuff to get to. Tons of other stuff to get to. Tons of stuff. Like pointing out that Odo stops just short of, it's just one more thing, doing his Columbo impression again. Yeah. Really close. Hey, and Dominion. Somebody said Dominion. So I'm saying Dominion. Yeah. Please. No drinking games around references to the Dominion. They are really dragging that out. Oh, yeah. And I understand, based on what people have told me, that I'm probably going to be happier that, we're talking about the Dominion than actually going through with the Dominion stuff or whatever. I don't know. People talk about the Dominion like it's the Dominion or something, but Jiminy Christmas. It's like a mention every episode without, really explaining what it is. So, yeah, okay, we get it. Maybe we'll get there one day. Who knows? Hey, and I got to say, at the end of the episode, I really like Odo's Wonder Woman spin as he turns into the top. Yeah, but she's seen the top. It would have been cooler if he turned into Wonder Woman. Oh, yeah, right.
I just realized the computer-generated villagers and the meatbag man were reunited by a trill and whatever Odo is. This may be the most idyllic episode of Deep Space Nine so far.
We'll dig deeper into Shadowplay in a moment, but first, a word from Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection. These are big ships. Oh, don't worry, they're not so big they won't fit into your place. They're small, but they're not the really small ships. Yeah, they're sort of between the teeny tiny starships that we used to talk about and the XL editions that we've also talked about before. Here's the thing. They've got tons of Discovery starships for you to check out. In fact, they've got so many, they call it a collection. And this collection is full of superb ships. Remember that they are officially authorized by CBS Studios, and they're made from quality, weighty materials. We're talking die-cast metal and ABS materials. And they're all based on the CG models used in the actual production of Star Trek Discovery, which, well, is a great idea if you're going to make a whole line of Discovery starships. That is absolutely the way to do it. Those guys at Eagle Moss, they know what they're doing. They're smart. They're thinking ahead. They are indeed. Big ships. The Shenzhou is the one you're going to start with. It's 6 to 8 inches from front to back. Totally awesome ship. Comes with that wonderful display base so you can display your ship. And it comes with a really cool collector's magazine, which has information, both in-universe information about stuff about the ship, as well as, what went into designing and making the ship. Now, the very first ship in the collection, that would be the USS Shenzhou, NCC 1227. It is available to subscribers for only $9.95 with free shipping at eaglemoss.com/Discovery Starships. Additional models include the Discovery, the Europa, and the Vulcan cruiser Solkar class. And can I just say really quickly, because we get caught up in the talking points, we get caught up in the here's this thing we want to say, here's this thing we want to say.
I love all of my starships that I've gotten from Eagle Moss, my Discovery ships, especially, honestly, the Discovery, because the Discovery, and, you know, people have heard me say this before, I wasn't really sold on the Discovery on screen. It wasn't until I actually held the Discovery in my hand that I was like, okay, I feel this ship now. So
pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty neat. Now, new ships will ship monthly at an exclusive 20% discount off the standard retail price. And those, by the way, also come with free shipping.
And by the way, if you are subscribing, well, that means you're entitled to free gifts worth over $100. And, of course, you may cancel your subscription at any time. For full details, you can go to eaglemoss.com/discovery starships. Now, let's say you'd rather purchase your favorite ships individually. Well, you can do that either online at shop.eaglemoss.com or at your local comic book shop for the regular price of $54.95 each.
But again, to subscribe, eaglemoss.com/discovery starships. And a big thanks to Eagle Moss for sponsoring this week's show. I would say my thanks is like actual starship size for them doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big thanks. Yeah.
So I jotted down a few notes a couple of days after my first watch of Shadowplay.
Yeah.
I would say the most important thing that happens in this episode is also the least interesting. It's the whole thing with Jake telling his dad that he doesn't want to be in Starfleet. It's fine. It's an important moment for the character. Mm-hmm. We may actually have one of those rare beasts, an episode of DS9 with an intended and intentional message. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happens. But I think it's probably a total of 6 minutes of screen time, maybe.
Yeah, very little. Yeah.
And it's also sort of after school specially, which is fine. The stuff with the village is really muddled, but also really interesting, at least to me. But, you know, I love Moriarty. I love Minuet. I love figuring out, you know, what we owe to our creations and the creativity of others. And, what do you do when the mirror talks back to you? When you're pretty sure you're not crazy and the mirror talks back to you.
Right.
And I completely forgot about Vedic Bareil coming to the station.
Huh. All right.
Like when I was writing up my notes a couple of days later, I totally forgot about that. So let's go ahead and start with that one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like about Vedic Bareil, and actually just the little glimpses that we've got of Bajoran, well, it's not about Bajoran theology, but at least Bajoran religious variation. You have, we had Kaiopaka, and we've had Vedic Bareil, and we've had Vedic Wynn. So we're getting all these different tastes of the personalities that make up and interpret what Bajorans study and believe in their theology. So the thing about Bareil, it's like he's likable. We like him. Kira clearly likes him. He's a good guy. He's the cool minister who knows how to talk to the kids and to the adults, and he just wants people to be cool.
Right.
There's not a lot of there in this plot line, except that as a character thing, we get to bring him back and we get to see another side of Kira, and they make it sexy, which is something that Trek rarely does, and I will say rarely does well. Mm-hmm. But there's something I like about these two, and I like the very stark contrast between Bareil and Wynn, that it's two completely different approaches to, theoretically, people who would be on the same page about their belief system.
How many priests do you know?
A handful.
Okay.
A handful.
Yeah. Were you comfortable with them when you first met them?
Some more comfortable than others.
Okay.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the neatest things about this, because like I knew a guy that I used to, drinking really plays a huge part in my life, doesn't it? I know a guy that I used to go drinking with who became a priest. I know a guy when I was back in art school a million years ago who wanted to be a Catholic priest. But they were like people who wanted to be. And then when I started meeting priests, suddenly I was a little bit uptight, except then my friends who wanted to be priests became priests. And it's like, oh, I remember, watching you unable to walk straight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's like,
right.
So, I mean, I do love the introduction of humanity. It's fun to see Kira sort of have to get over the idea that, that priests should be capitalized and that they should all be treated reverently because, while everybody should be treated with respect, a priest is a guy. Mm-hmm. Or a woman. I mean, if you're talking Anglican mm-hmm. or Episcopalian or, other religions, I'm sure. I like the fact in this episode, Kira can have a personal life and do her job. That was actually my favorite thing out of their whole thing, because I'm already hip to the idea that, priests can be hip sometimes. Some of them are not, but some of them are, right? Which, sort of goes to what you were saying about Kaiopaka and Vedic Win and Vedic Barile. I mean, they're different kinds of priests because people are different. And so they approach, yes, it's philosophy, but it's also their job. Mm-hmm. I mean, they approach their jobs differently, and so they're going to be different in each way. What I liked is what we learned about Kira, though. Like Odo brings, not Odo, I'm sorry, Quark has Barile sort of brought in to distract Kira. And it turns out she can have a life and do her job, which, is something that sometimes gets questioned on television or in real life as far as women. Well, you can't be a this because you're a mother, or you can't be a this because you're too emotional. Well, actually, just like a guy, Kira, or, some guys, because some guys can't do it, and some women can't do it, but Kira is able to, have a personal life and have a professional life too. So that was my biggest takeaway from that one. And also... a couple of words, but really enjoy the kiss. Be present for that, dude. Seriously.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the other B plot. Okay. Which would be Jake and O'Brien, mm-hmm. and of course Commander Sisko and the Starfleet Academy in big lights over Broadway.
With an exclamation point, Jake, with an exclamation point.
I thought there were some good, relatable moments, but, it got such short attention because there is so much else going on in the episode. But those little nuggets that we get in the 5 or 6 minutes of screen time, I thought were perfectly fine and really just culminating in what we knew was coming. I hope we knew was coming, which is Benjamin Sisko being the good father and just saying, hey, it's cool, man. It's all mm-hmm. right. Live your life. Find your passion.
This idea of Jake studying under O'Brien was introduced, I want to say, in the prologue of last week's episode. Mm-hmm. Yep. Kind of neat to see it carried over. It wasn't a thing that was just forgotten. Do you feel like it was actually, did they do it too quickly?
Yeah, this is a plot line that I would have liked to have seen. Look, they don't need to make a whole episode out of it. Yeah. But if you're going to stretch this out over maybe 3 or 4 episodes, the only thing that I would ask for is that we actually see Benjamin Sisko kind of grow into his position. Because it just seems like it all got kind of wrapped up very quickly and very easily.
Would have been an interesting thing to see him discuss with Nog.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to see Piers talking it over. I mean, it's great. The O'Brien thing is great, and don't misunderstand. I mean, the way that played out is how it should have played out. It might have been interesting to see it play out a tiny bit longer, but I mean, not if it was going to be the same thing week after week. If it was going to be week after week of Jake saying, I don't know how to tell my dad, but I have to tell my dad, but I don't know how to tell my dad, but I have to tell my dad. It might have almost been neat to see him try to, be the square peg going into the round hole before realizing, no, you know what? It just occurred to me, this isn't what I want to do. But I mean, that's not a complaint. It happened the way it happened. And
that might have set us up for some interesting compare and contrast with the way that Nog is being raised. Like what is the expectation like, which we kind of know, but we haven't really seen or heard that conversation. Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's get to the village. Oh.
Let's talk about the village people, shall
we? Why don't we? Yeah. I was a fan of the cop. What about you?
More the construction worker, but
really?
I thought they were all good. Yeah, I thought they were all good. Yeah. All right, so I have so many questions, some of them very sort of mechanical questions, but of course there's the big philosophical ideas here, because it's just so much to unpack with what's going on in the village and with that holoprojector. So one thing that was kind of a weird choice, I thought, when that projector is turned off and back on by Dax, the holographic people returning look like they knew they were gone for some time and looking at their physical bodies again. So Taya's mother looks like she's been waiting a long time for their reunion. So do they all exist in real time inside the computer? And were they aware of what was going on? Because, see, I kind of wondered if switching it off and back on again wouldn't just sort of reset from where they were. Like, no time would have passed at all. You know, you turn off your computer, you go back the next day, you turn it back on, you just kind of pick up from where you left off. Now, the computer's got a clock in it, so it knows to display to you what the time is, but it's not like your documents were doing things while you were away, you know? So, but I guess from a storytelling point of view, well, then you kind of have the problem that they all have the ability to reject the hologram hypothesis again. I think it's a happier ending that we leave those holographic people there and they actually know who they are. They have some self-awareness about how and why they exist in the universe, which is kind of an interesting thing.
What's interesting, though, is the 22 people who came back may or may not, right? Mm-hmm. So is the holographic projector, because it's obviously not just projecting, it's also running all of their personalities as like subroutines, right? Or subsystems.
Yeah.
Is it like hipping them to what happened while they were gone? Or like, is Taya's mom going to be like, oh, it's so wonderful to see you, let's go out to the field. And Taya's going to be like, oh, by the way, you'll never guess what.
Right.
We're not real. And then Taya's mom's going to be like, oh, Taya. Yeah, right. And then everybody else is going to go, no, seriously, she's right. We're not. I mean, we're real, but we're not really here. I mean, we're here, but we're not real. I mean, we're here.
Yeah. So you've got, say, with the rest of the village, whatever, 40, 50 people, and you got this 22 that disappeared. So the 40 or 50 people who went through this shutdown and reboot, you actually could create a philosophical schisms between these two groups, right, where you come back in 50 years and you have the hologram deniers and the hologram believers who are just at it all the time with each other.
I guess that is possible. The other question, too, I mean, the thing that it reminded me of, because this computer that's running this village is doing a lot of really heavy computation, right? So the physical beings weren't there anymore. Did they still exist in some way? I'm reminded of in 2010, which is not a great movie. But it is a great book, honestly. It's not on par with 2001, but it's close. Mm-hmm. But in the book and the movie, when Dr. Chandra has to take apart Hal so that they can do whatever they're doing with their computer so that they can make it back to Earth, Hal asks, will I dream?
Yeah.
And Chandra says he doesn't know. It's possible that these people were like existing. I mean, this could be like the Tholian web, right? They could actually be there. I think it's the Tholian web, right? Where we have Ghost Kirk. Mm-hmm. That's yeah. So I mean, there could be like these ghost people sort of wandering around. Like maybe if we stuck around for 5 minutes, they would be like, "You're never going to guess. We're not real." And their mom's going to be like, "I know, right? I've been waving at you for like a week." Right. Well, like a day, because I only disappeared a day ago. But that other guy, like 6 months, walking around going, "Oh, thank goodness! I thought I was the only one."
Yeah.
Sorry. It's all mind bleepery, and it's wonderful. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about more mind bleepery then. So the real or manufactured issue about the intelligence of the holograms, that's one part of the issue here. So if Taya is a unique life form, that's or not, that's a very interesting question. But the more important question is, what kind of compassion do we show? Well, to Rurigan, for one thing, because of his feelings for Taya and everyone else. So Taya may not be real, but his experience of her is real, as are his emotions. And there would be one thing to do the episode where you're just seeing that through Rurigan, but I thought they really effectively in this episode made you feel that through Odo. That's what was so nice about this is, you know, our cast being sort of the entry point to understanding these others.
Well, you say that that's nice, but I was a bit confused and maybe even a tiny bit troubled by that. So like,
really?
Rurigan's lived there for 30 years and he knows that it's not real. And well, I mean, it is real, but it's not real. And I don't want to keep doing that. But I mean, he knows that he made the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the whole thing breaks up and he's known probably for the past few months Like, I don't know if he's actually dying or not, or if it's just that he's getting old, but he's known for the past few months that something's going wrong with the machine. So for the past 6 months, once people start disappearing, he's sort of had to come to terms with the idea that, yeah, this is all going away. And so then he stands there and says, I'm ready to go. And Odo's like, well, what are you talking about? What about all these people? Right. And Rurigan says, he's done with it. He's ready to go home. And Odo says, what about the people? And he says, they're not real. And Odo says, they're real to you. To which the old guy says, okay, I guess I care. To which Odo says, what do you care? They're not real. I mean, honestly, if Odo was going to defend the life forms that are the computer, I would be fine with that. If the old man was going to beg and plead to restart it, I would be fine with that. If Odo is willing to admit that he feels for Taya and wants to restart it anyway, I'm fine with that. There was I was a little troubled by, all of this hinging on making the old guy feel bad and then making him feel worse for not feeling bad enough at first. We go ahead and turn it back on and it's all fine. But it struck me as cruel in a way to get him to take responsibility for these things that he's made up when he has to have mourned his real world. And now he spent at least the past 6 months mourning the death of everybody he knows that's about to come. It's only dumb luck that Dax and Odo ended up there. For the past 6 months, he's probably been sitting here, dealing with the fact that he's going to watch his granddaughter disappear. He's going to watch everybody he knows and loves, even though they're not real. He's going to watch everybody he knows and loves vanish before his eyes.
Yes.
And so then we have to be like, don't you want to fix this? And he's like, no, I don't want to fix it. I just want to go home. He's like, but you care. He's like, okay, you're right. I care. Fix it. Because then there's also the possibility that Dax wasn't going to be able to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that Odo's line of questioning to get him to that point was cruel in any way. I thought it was... I thought he was challenging Rurigan at that point because Rurigan wasn't being honest about what his emotional investment in all of this was. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a very real possibility that Dax could not have fixed that or would have fixed it in the wrong way. And then suddenly, well, you got a village full of Klingons. Sorry, I just, I don't understand how this thing works. So, yeah, let's get you out of here anyway, But no, I thought Odo's line of questioning was look, in Odo's way, Odo is not the, fuzzy, cuddly guy that somebody else in the Star Trek pantheon of characters might be. Odo is gruff, he's tough, he's very unemotional, but he's doing the Odo thing to get Rurigan to actually be honest about who he is and what he wants out of this and why this whole thing exists in the first place.
That's interesting. I think Odo is lying. I think Odo can't stand the idea of Taya disappearing, and so he tricks, not tricks, but he makes Rurigan, he makes Rurigan feel it again so that Odo can turn it back on. I wondered, if Rurigan had been like, no, take me home. Could Dax and Odo have come back and turned it back on? Because I think Odo thinks they owe something to the machine people. Yeah, to the villagers in a way.
Yeah, no, I don't deny that Odo has an emotional investment in this as well. Again, very clever that Odo is the one who does this sort of friendly act at the end and then smiles as he leaves. And they so cleverly hide that in the transporter beam, never to be seen again, that smile. But clearly he has an emotional investment in this as well.
Well, no, he still has Quark to whom to be mean. That usually brings a smile to Odo's face.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the... I'm curious what happens to the inhabitants once this is all over. Once they realize and accept that they're programs, right?
Yeah.
Like before they left, was there any part of any of them that was like, hey, by the way, Dax, this thing where we die? Could you maybe not? How would that be?
Yeah.
Or, can you program out accidents? Or, would they build, because they can do anything. They literally can do anything because they're not real, because they have this amazing computer running everything, right? They can literally do anything. So would they build a virtual reality inside their augmented reality where they could, play with advanced technology or ridiculously advanced technology? Would they find a way to, now they know that the only limits are what they don't understand yet? Do they become like this hyper technological place, or do they just go back to playing their, sort of mid-90s D&D RPG computer game?
Right. So you could have a situation where the holoprojector computer is making one of its holographic people creations come over and reprogram the holographic computer itself.
Yes, paging Professor Moriarty.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a terrifying prospect.
Why is it terrifying, though? Because, then it's just a computer. Hey, this could be how the Borg are born. Then it's just a computer like growing and growing and growing. It's already shown a tremendous amount of growth, I think, in creating Taya and other kids, because there were other kids there as well, unless Rurigan created perpetual children. and Taya was like the one that was actually a child. But, it's creating other kids, so it's got to be evolving on some level, I would think.
Yeah, well, the terrifying part of it is, well, you already said it, which is Borg, or I'm thinking V'ger, or whatever else. The more this computer decides that it needs self-actualization, that it needs to grow and evolve, because it has already grown and evolved. This is a thing it can do. Then what's to stop it? And then once Rurigan is gone, because one day he will be gone, he will have to die. Yes. His machine can just keep going in perpetuity. Well, until it starts to break down and you start losing people again. But this is a glitch it could fix. Now that they understand the why and the how, they could fix that glitch.
Yeah, absolutely. They know they're holograms who can't leave the valley. I'm guessing second thing they're going to want to do is leave the valley. Yeah, right. Or first thing even. And so they're going to have to build a machine that's going to let them do that. And that's, that to me is an absolutely... it's a fascinating idea. I'm curious, actually. You find V'ger terrifying?
Well, it was terrifying when it was threatening to destroy everything in its path. We got lucky because the Enterprise was there. We got lucky because Kirk wouldn't raise shields. We got lucky because Spock was able to mind meld with it. But, had the Enterprise not been there and Kirk and Spock not been there, V'ger would have eaten the Earth. So... yeah, so there is something a little bit terrifying about that.
Well, when you put it that way, yeah. But isn't part of the whole message of that, like, understanding it or trying to understand it? It's like it's truly idic, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, at the end, that was a very pure expression of idic, sure.
Yeah. There was a line that I really liked about Taya. It was when Odo said, she thinks, she feels. And I thought a different reading of that could be, she thinks she feels. And then what's his name? Rurigan says she only seems to. And this goes back to a question that you and I have talked about, on this show and on Mission Log Live. It tends to come up with Dr. Ali Matu quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like, what do we owe our creations? Like, if it thinks, or if it's presenting itself as... It's also part of measure of a man, right? Right. Is Data real? Well, it doesn't matter. How are you going to treat him? How are you going to treat that? I think about this a lot, honestly, with graffiti. And I know that's kind of crazy, but I think about it, and I didn't even hear about this until earlier this morning. But as we record this over the weekend, somebody damaged the Arc de Triomphe in France, is where they keep that. The one in France, not the one in Vegas. Okay, the one in Vegas is already an abomination. But I think about it with graffiti or things like when the Taliban started blowing up thousands of year old relics in Afghanistan or in Iran when they started or Iraq, excuse me. When they started taking down museums and things like that. I get it. It's not your bag. I get it. It's not something you believe in. But the disrespect of something that somebody else created, something that somebody else made. Right. And then, of course, if you can add to it, like if you go to slash the Mona Lisa and the Mona Lisa is able to go, hey, hang on a second. Right. What is there something that we owe the work and creativity of others? And then, how much more do we owe it if it can, even if it's just a recording, even if it's just a talking Tina doll that you pull the string, that says, you know,
oh, no, that it's coming to kill me. So that's
no, it's coming to kill Telly Savalas, dude. You're fine. You'll be fine.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just, I mean, it's, is it respecting other people? Is it respecting other people's work? Is it respecting beauty, or is it just staying in your own lane? There's something about all of it that I was wondering about. But then, you know, when Rurigan says, you know, she only seems to feel, isn't that enough to treat her with respect?
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, I think what we have here is the respect that is shown to Rurigan. It's not specifically about the respect to Tea's feelings, because again, that's an academic question at the end of the day. If we are fooled that she feels, if we are fooled that she exists, fine. We won't actually be able to answer the question if she feels, if she exists, if she claims that she feels and she exists. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the reaction of the people around her, and that's who we are showing respect to in this episode. And that's, you already mentioned it, I think I had that in my notes for the next segment, which is Measure of a Man. That is absolutely what jumped to mind when I saw this, because ultimately, if data can fool you, fine. Doesn't really matter. What matters is how will you as a human being who are fully possessed of your emotions, how will you react to this being that you don't understand?
It is so fun to hear meatbags trying to figure out how manufactured intelligence might feel. If only they knew someone they could ask.
Shadowplay is the name of the episode, John. Shadowplay. There are actually a couple of things here that I thought the title might allude to.
Sure. Might one of those be actual shadow plays, the ancient art form?
Well, I meant as far as what's happening in the show.
Oh, sure.
Because my assumption is it's the people in the village, right? Mm-hmm. They're imitation people, so not imitation people, but whatever. But then there's also the play in the shadows that's going on with getting Bareil to the station.
Sure.
Yeah, Quark's like Jedi level bad in this episode, or good, depending on how you view the whole thing. Yeah. And I gotta say really quickly, I meant to mention it earlier, I love, like, when Quark says to Kira, yeah, I think you don't like me. And what were the things she said? She said, you collaborated with the Cardassians, you regularly jeopardize this ship. I can't remember what the third, you cheat your customers. I don't like you. I despise you. Yeah, I don't dislike you, I despise you. Yeah. Well done. Of course, we'll like him again next week. Sure. In fact, we liked him this week because he really didn't seem that terrible. But, you know, it's not bad to be reminded every now and then that he has nearly cost everybody on DS9, certainly the named characters that we know, their lives. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yep. Shadowplay is the name of the episode, and having done with the dealt with the name of the episode, we move on now to the meat of the episode. You know, the messages, the morals, the ideas, the ideals, whether the whole thing holds up. In fact, we start there. Mr. Champion, Shadowplay, does this episode hold up as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I mean, it's super dense. I feel like this is one of those episodes that we could do a whole other mission log on, and we'd come up with entirely different talking points, possibly, if we just re-recorded. Stop now and hit record again. We've got 3 storylines here, some more simplistic than others, but none of them actually feels wasted. Even if we're just walking away with the slightest hint of some actual character depth or additional character depth, it's handled in a realistic adult way. If this had been a longer episode, or if they had decided to make the Starfleet thing stretch out over time, I like I said before, I maybe would have liked to have seen Benjamin grow into his acceptance of Jake's decision. Just a little more nuance, a little more detail there. But that's such a small point. At the center of this episode, you got good sci-fi weirdness. With a challenging concept for the audience to wrap our heads around. Definitely a Twilight Zone feel to this one, and The Prisoner, and a bit like Truman Show kind of thing. But most importantly, with Rurigan, there's an emotional heart to the story. And we would also say with Odo, there's an emotional heart to the story. It's beautiful to watch. You feel sadness for his loss. You feel hope for his creation. You want him to enjoy what he has. Odo asks, why should it matter to you if a hologram cries? And he says, because I love her. Boom. Got to the heart of the matter right there. I was thinking also this is kind of the opposite of last week's episode. This is the opposite of Paradise. So in Paradise, you have an insane person building this version of utopia, which essentially enslaves everybody around her with this false premise of what they're doing there. But in this one, you actually have a benevolent person who has created his own utopia, which has not hurt anybody else around him. And we look at it, we just go like, yeah, good for you. We'll turn your machine back on. We'll help you live out your life the way you want to live out your life. And there's some interesting mind bleepery here. I ask myself, I'll ask you, if the people that you knew were gone, the world that you knew was gone, could you live out your days with a simulation of them? We kind of hit on that when we talked about Tasha Yar dying in Next Gen. Here's this machine, the holodeck, that can put together a representation of that person. Would that mess with your ability to accept reality and grieve?
I would certainly get the temptation.
Yeah. And
who knows? If I had the power of the holodeck, yeah, I'd probably do it. I mean, the question is, would I be happy with it? Would it be fulfilling enough? I don't know, but right. I think I know myself well enough to know that I would try. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I don't think it is a good thing, but I think if we all had that power, I'd be surprised if a lot of people weren't tempted to at least give it a go.
Well, and I think we changed the stakes here a little bit in this show, because it's not just that he's living in a simulation. It's that the simulation now has a life beyond what he created. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of throwing the wrench in that works. But it was an interesting idea that I thought. The other thing that I kind of was toying with in terms of mind bleepery is, are we too harsh or maybe not harsh enough in kind of wrapping our minds around the idea that people might have misplaced attachments to things that aren't real, quote unquote real. In this, again, Rurigan is benevolent. He's doing this for himself. He doesn't want to bother anybody. He just wants to live in this kind of fantasy that he's created. Mm-hmm. But there is the possibility that, people grow these attachments to things or ideas that aren't quote unquote real. And let's just, I'll throw out an example. So you and I go to Disneyland a lot because, heck, we can. It's right here. Now that is presented as entertainment. It's not presented as something that's real, but it plays on emotional response to entertainment. Mm-hmm. You go there and you're delighted, you have fun, or you get scared at something, People used to argue with me that the problem with the Disney parks is that they weren't real. And I would say, well, yeah, it's real. It's just not naturally occurring. You sort of like be riding in a boat to get from one park to another down in Florida. And I remember, looking at something and saying, well, that rock there in the middle of the lake, it isn't real. I was like, well, it is real. It's right over there. We can
run this boat straight into it.
Yeah, we could, but it's not naturally occurring. It didn't just happen there because, nature made it happen that way. So, the same question for, say, a person 20 years from now who develops an attachment to an AI inside a robot body or something. Is that a weirdo who needs help? Or is that a person who is just sharing an emotional reaction to something that you don't get? It's not something we necessarily have to be concerned with now. And maybe 20 years is, I don't know, too conservative, or maybe I'm right on the mark, but it's a possibility. It's a thing to think about, that people will be able to very convincingly develop attachments to things that aren't people, that aren't naturally occurring people, mm-hmm. As did Rurigan here. And then what is our reaction to that when we walk into that, when we try to understand and accept it? So that was the mind bleepery. And that's even before we get to messages or anything else. But I want to know what you thought about the episode holding up.
Yeah, I thought it did. I mean, with the exception of, well, like I say, the stuff with Kira and Bareil was completely forgettable to me the first time I watched it. When I went back to think about it, the two things I got were the after school special with Jake, which was fine. I like the fact that he showed up, that he owned it, that they treated his character with some sort of depth. It would have been easy just to, send him off to Starfleet in a couple of years. That'd be fine. But I mean, it's kind of what happened. I know there were other things going on behind the scenes with Will Wheaton, but that's kind of what happened with Will Wheaton as well, with Wesley Crusher, right? It's like, oh, well, time for you to go to the academy. Bye. Yeah. And then he does come back later and say, it turns out that's not my thing. Might have been more interesting to see that happen there, but it's happening here, so it's cool. And the stuff with the village, I mean, what I found interesting was there were a few different ways that I thought it might go. You mentioned Twilight Zone earlier. I thought that Taya might end up being like the Billy Mooney character from that episode of Twilight Zone, where he sends people off into the corn. Yeah. And then I thought, actually, maybe the old guy is Kevin Uxbridge. I mean, there were a number of different things that this could have been. I was not at all surprised when he was standing there after they turned the whole thing off. But I mean, what's cool was I wasn't 100% certain what was going to happen. I was joking when I was watching this episode that Rurigan actually struck me as an NPC. I know I mentioned this earlier, but as an NPC from a mid-90s RPG that you would play on console or on a computer. Because you bump into a villager and they would very helpfully take you over to somebody else that you could talk to, right? And so it was like obviously there were not going to be any monsters coming. There was some mystery to figure out, but the whole thing kind of had that feel. But it was neat. I mean, there was just so much. So at the time, honestly, of writing this, that would have been state of the art. I mean, they were actually writing the kind of thing that you would have been playing at the time, which is I think this episode holds up very well. There are problems in many different parts of it, and I don't care. Now, maybe it's because they're just, singing straight to me. Like, hey, look, Ken, thinking computers. What's going to happen? What are we going to do? And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to talk to John about this, and everybody else too. And yes, I don't, whatever. Bring on the Dominion. Bring on your "we're mean to everybody" episodes, because I got this one. Right. This may honestly be my favorite episode of DS9 so far. I mean, I haven't watched it all yet or rewatched it all yet, so I don't know. But so far, this is the episode with which I've been able to have the most fun, I think. Yeah, so yes, for me, absolutely it holds up. But what about it? This is that question I said we shouldn't ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What about messages?
Well, thematically, I think the thing there was about finding your passion, finding your life. And we see that clearly in the Jake story, because Sisko comes right out and tells him, you need to find what you love to do and be that person, do that thing. And that's kind of the lesson then for Rurigan, which again, you could argue it either way. Are we doing the right thing? Is he doing the right thing by turning the machine back on? Should he just stick to his guns and say, I just want to hop on the next transport and get back to my home planet. This little 30-year experiment is over. But this seems to be who he is now. That is his passion. That is his life. So if that's what it is, so be it. That's a primary message that I got out of this, and those overlapping storylines. What about you?
I thought there was a quick lesson on friendship here, with Odo telling Taya why he wasn't going to turn into something else for her. Mm-hmm. Because he actually says it. He's like, people used to want me to change into things, and I thought if I did that, they'd be my friend. See also steal things for them. See also, do things I shouldn't do for them. Right. I did it because I thought we'd be friends. It turns out they just wanted something. So, I thought that was kind of a neat little, there were like these little sort of gem moments, I suppose. I mean, there's the whole thing that happens with Jake, obviously, which we've said plenty of times you can't live somebody else's life for them. Mm-hmm. It was neat seeing Jake, take away the lesson. You can't let somebody else live your life for you.
Yeah.
Or, decide what's going to be for you. And one of my favorite lines, honestly, in the whole thing, and I love it. And the next time somebody asks me if it's hot enough for me, after 7 lifetimes, the impersonal questions aren't much fun anymore.
Yes,
said Dax.
Yes.
And I like the idea of, there are times that that's not necessarily appropriate, but I really like the idea of maybe we could skip the, how's the weather?
Right.
And get on to weightier things.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer, Rod Roddenberry. Find out more at the Roddenberry Podcast Network. That's podcast.roddenberry.com. Over there you'll find Mission Log Live, Women at Warp, Priority 1, and the Trek Files. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, you can check out Trek FM at trek.fm. And for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
Next week, Playing God.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Playing God. Sounds like Rurigan's biography. Am I right? End transmission.
Podcast.roddenberry.com, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.